Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dev Marketer channel. Today we're going to be doing part 14 of our series on the advanced blog and CMS. So today what we'll be focusing on is, now that we got our permissions set up, we've got users set up, it's time to set up roles. So now we're going to have an ability in here where we basically have the ability to manage roles. We want to link permissions to roles. That's kind of the focus of today's video. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll need an index page for all of our roles to display each role to the administrator here. And then after that, we will want to go in and edit each role, or I guess view the role, and then we'll see all the permissions that that role has. And then you'll want to edit the role, which will allow us to basically, we'll have like a checkbox for basically all of these. So all the available permissions, we'll have checkboxes for them. At least that's the way I think we should, just probably the easiest way to handle it. You just check the ones you want, you click save, and then it updates that role to allow for those permissions. So that is basically the focus of today's video. So let's jump into it. So here I am in my project. Now in the last video, you guys didn't see me do it, but what we did was created the controller. So we've already got that. So let's take a look here at the role controller. This should be completely empty, but here we are going to basically grab all of our roles in the index page and then return it in. There we go. And then we do need to make a little UI change to our management. So if we go down to our resources here, in our layout, we need to make a small minor change to this manage navigation. So that's actually under includes, navigation, manage. We need to have some subcategories here where we can define whether we're clicking on roles or permissions. So that's going to be kind of one thing we got to do. Let's go ahead. So right here, let's go ahead and we're going to make an unordered list. So we'll just group that there. Let's make an unordered list, and then inside of here, we'll make a couple list items. So here's where we're going to click roles. Well, we got to wrap that in an anchor tag. Okay, perfect. So just like that. So now if we take a look at this in the browser, we refresh. Oh, we don't have our route made. So let's go ahead and make that route. We noted this roles.index, but we didn't make the route. So go ahead and do that real quick. Same thing here as before. I'm actually just going to copy it because I don't want to do destroy on routes either, for the same reason I didn't want to do it on permissions. It's kind of sketchy. So we'll just avoid that. And then, but otherwise it's the same. Let's go ahead and refresh that. So here we go. So now we've got kind of a subcategory here as well. Now eventually we'll make this more dynamic, but I want to take one step at a time. For this video, that's good enough for the menu. Eventually we'll want to make this more dynamic where these open up and close and they're activated. They're highlighted when we're on that right page. We'll do all that down the road. All right, so roles will now take us here to that role. Now, of course, it's not working. Let's go ahead and import this role. Okay, now that we got that, let's go ahead and make this index page. Let's see, let's clean this all up. Manage. Let's go ahead and make that folder for roles. And then our index page. Okay, so there we go. Let's take a look at this in the browser, but just created a very basic setup here. We got our thing there. We've got this columns wrapper, and then we just loop through, and we're going to create a box for each of these. We're going to show off the name, the like friendly name, the normal, the like slug name, and then the description. So, and this should be just description. Okay, great. So let's take a look at that. There we go. Yeah, it looks pretty good to me. I would probably move these closer together, but let's go ahead here. We'll give this a class of subtitle. This should pull it up together. There we go. That's good enough. All right. So now what we can do, let's go ahead and add buttons down here to edit each of these so we can, view. We'll do like a details button and then an edit button. Okay, so there we go. We got a good index page. So each of these should now go to the respected. Of course, there's nothing there yet because we haven't set it up, but each of these will go to each individual role page so we can view the details or we can edit them. So let's go ahead and get the view one set up because that's easy. Let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, so here we go. We got a basic setup. This is basically what we're looking for. We've got the information about the role and then all the permissions related to that role. So that's kind of the core thing we're looking for. At least for right now, that's good. So the next step would be, and it looks a little funky because you see, because of the way this default seating looks, because you see like all these are basically the exact same thing. But in a real world scenario, in fact, we're going to change it here in a moment when we unlock the ability to edit this. I would have something like this would be called like super admin. Maybe the name is called super administrator, but then this description would say like has full access to whatever, and it would describe it here. It'd look a lot more natural. Right now it looks very repetitive, but that's just the way it is. Same here. This is actually the description. So normally if we were in like a real world scenario, this would say create users, and it would say, allow a user to create other users or whatever would be the description. So it'd say that in parentheses. It would look more natural. Right now it looks a little repetitive, but that's just the way that it's set up right now. So we've got the show. So we've got the index and the show. Let's go ahead. Let's get the edit done so that we can edit the users. And then the only other thing would be to create a user, which is also pretty straightforward. Create a role would be the only thing that we really have to do at this point. I think we're good though. This is moving right along. So now let's go through, and in fact, I'm just going to copy, for the most part, we can copy this, and we'll just create, in fact, I'll just duplicate this, because when we go to do our edit page, I'm going to mostly, I think, just kind of copy the show page, because it's going to be very similar. So let's go ahead and duplicate this, and we're going to do edit on this. And the biggest difference here is we're going to grab all of the permissions. We'll have checkboxes next to them, and then we'll auto-select the ones that relate to this role. That's going to be the purpose. Okay, so here at the top, let's see, we're editing the role. So at the top, let's go ahead and get rid of this here. Edit, and we're going to say edit and then the name of the role. And then here we're going to create two boxes. We'll have one for like the role details and then one for all the permissions. So I'm actually just going to duplicate this columns thing and put it over here. And then this is where we're going to say role details. And once again, I'm going to do only, I'm only going to allow you to edit the description and the name, the display name, like the human readable name. I don't want you to be able to edit the slug, because if we edit the slug, it's going to cause problems, okay? So because the slug is hard-coded into the source code, so it's okay to update the other stuff because that really doesn't do anything. It just makes life easier to manage. But I don't really want to be able to edit the slug, okay? If I want to do that, I'll do that in the database. Once it's set up, you're not going to want to change it. So that's kind of the point. So once we're here, let's go through and get that set up. Equals. Okay, so right here, what we're doing, just so you guys know, I realized after I did this, I actually need all the permissions. So I have to do I have to grab all the permissions in order to be able to list all of the permissions, all the available permissions inside as checkboxes. I need a group of all the permissions. So that's what I'm doing here. I can't just do like the relationship between, like, get all the permissions related to a role. I will need that too, but I can't just do that because that only shows the permissions that belong to that role. But I actually need to see all the permissions, because when we're editing a user, we need to show them all the available permissions, and then we need to select the ones that are already belonging to that role, and that way the unchecked ones represent other permissions that are available but are not currently selected to the role. You could then, select them and so forth. So that's the goal. That's why I'm doing this here. So we're gonna get all the permissions, and then we gotta pass that in with permissions, and do it that way. So also realized we're gonna need some, let's do some eager loading here. I realized that when I was working on the last one, I forgot to do it. So with permissions, right? Yeah, with permissions, that should be good. And then up here, let's do the same thing. So with permissions to get the eager loading. Since we know we're going to be using those anyway, we want to eager load them. We don't want to wait until the blade to start lazy loading them. Okay, so now that we got that, let's see, what were we doing? Okay, that's good. Go back to our project now. And now we can do this. So I assumed we would have it. Now we can go through. We're listing. We're making a checkbox for every single one of these. That's kind of the goal. Now that's basically should list all of them. Okay. Still having problems. I must have done. It looks like it's looking for permissions, which it shouldn't be. It's looking for permission. Right here. Permission all. There we go. Now it's a problem. Display name in query builder on the edit page. Display name. That should be good. Oh, so sometimes what I like to do here is just do a die dump, and we're going to okay, let's do this. Die dump. Okay, so I think I figured this out. This actually makes sense. I set up eager loading wrong. You can see here, I outputted, I just want to show you guys how I figured this out. The first object that I was, the roll, this is roll, this top one up here, number 1 is roll. I know that because when we do die dump, it's, that's the first one that I output. So, this first one is supposed to be roll, which I'm expecting to be a model object. Well, it's not a model object. It's a builder object. So you can see here, this is a builder object. This is what Laravel uses as a query builder. So I'm actually passing to the blade file a query builder, which doesn't have any data like I was expecting it to have, the display name and stuff like that. That's not in there because it's a query builder. What I actually need to do is convert the query builder into that object, and that never successfully got done. So now I'm realizing that that was the problem. So that's basically how I debugged this. I cut a bit of it out just because I was sitting here staring at the code and couldn't figure it out before I did this die dump. So, but I probably spent like 15 minutes or so trying to figure this out, and that's why. And so I want to show you guys how I debugged that. Anyway, what I need to do here is, I don't even know if I can combine find or fail, but we're going to try it anyway. But we'll have to do a get and see if that works. And if it's not, then we'll have to change this to be a where command. But let's see if this works. I'm not sure if this will work or not. Okay, so work. Roll. Okay, so it didn't. It kind of worked, but for some what it did here is it didn't actually do a find or fail. What it did was it went, I don't know, it did like all the rolls for some reason. So it came back as a collection. I'm not sure, that's kind of funny, but I actually suspected that might be the case. So what we're looking for is we want to do where ID is equal to ID. Okay, so we're going to do a where command with the permissions and then a get. This should work. All right, it's a query builder though. Let's see how that works. Okay, it comes back as a collection though. That's good. Okay, now I just have one roll. That's what I wanted. And then this one roll has, there we go. Now we have display name, we have description, we have all that data. But then it should also have, with the relationships here, it's got the permissions collection, and then inside of there we've got 10 permissions, and then each of those permissions is, each whatever. So has each of those name, display name, description. So that's what we wanted. This is actually what we expected. So that's good. So now let's get rid of the die dump. Let's get rid of this. And now everything should be working the way we wanted it to. So had to kind of learn on the, I don't know, I thought you could do a find or fail with eager loading. There's probably a way, and I swear I've done it before, but whatever, this seems to be working. Okay, so we can just treat all this the same. Now let's go back to the way it was before. So let's refresh. Okay, we just need to grab one. Another minor oversight on my part. We grabbed an object which only had one item in it. So I think we're done. That was a little bit of a winding path, but we got there. I think we're good to go now. The only thing we should have all the permissions, but we won't have the right checkboxes, or they won't be checked. So let's go in here. Well, there are no checkboxes. That's because we haven't created we need to create a view object. So let's go ahead and do that. scripts, and then inside of here, make our script tag. And then inside of here, there we go. Now we've got checkboxes. And if we go ahead and inspect this view, we should have it's an empty object. Okay, but if I check it, then it's an array. Let's go ahead and make this just an array. Okay, perfect. So now we're good to go there. The only thing we need to do at this point to fix this is we want these to be auto-checked to whichever permissions the user has. So let's do that. So the way I was going to handle that is I'm basically going to import the default here. I want in view, we're going to import the object for the permissions that the user has. So basically what we're going to handle here, we're going to do some Laravel magic, and we're going to do roles permissions pluck, and we're going to pluck the display name. It's escaped. Let's go ahead and make sure it's not escaped and try it again. There we go. Now it actually worked. All right. So now we have all those permissions. We don't have those ones. So that worked out pretty good. And this is true because Super Administrator has access to those. And these are the new ones we created. We haven't given it permission for those. So this actually really does work. So that's kind of how I did that one. Hopefully that made sense. We just, I wanted to import so we just outputted all of the permissions here as possible checkboxes. You can see we gave the value of each of these equal to the permission, and that to the actual name of the permission is the value here, and it's tied to the model. So then all we have to do is take that object down here, and then we just outputted the name of all the permissions that belong to this role now. So these are just all the permissions. This here is grabbing the permissions that belong to the current role, and then we just grabbed the name out into an array, and then it was then converted into view, and then view handled checking the boxes. So it actually ends up working out quite well. Okay, great. So from there, we're basically ready. We can submit the form and edit it. So to do that, what we're going to do, let's go ahead and get our submit button first of all, and then we're going to do the same trick I did in the previous video, which is when I had to do a little black magic to get these, since these are a checkbox group, I had to do that a little bit of black magic to get that to convert over to so I can submit it server side. Just the way the Buify project is. I don't know why it's that way. Okay, great. Let's do that. So we're just going to go through here. Permissions. Let's just make... In fact, I'll just do it up here. We'll just make another text field. And it's going to be hidden. And then we'll just make the value equal to permissions selected. And otherwise, oh, we got to give it a name. So we'll just say permissions. Perfect. Then let's go ahead and put the button, the save button, just down here at the end of the box. So we got the box here. We can go and put it in this column. So this is the end of the box. And then we can save changes to the role. So there we go. Now we got edit done. Now we do need to get the update function working so that we can successfully make changes. Okay, so first things first, let's go ahead and validate this shit. So we're gonna have display name. All right, so now let's go through here. Role equals role, find or fail, ID, and then we can go ahead and save it. So let's go ahead and save those necessary ones. Once again, we're not worrying about the normal slug. So we just have display name. And we've got our description. Okay, now what I want to do down here, we're actually just going to go ahead and save the role right in here. the rest of what we're going to do is we're working with the relationship. So we're actually technically done with the role. So those are the 2 points that we need to save for the role. The rest has to do with the relationship. So it's this permissions relationship. So the next part that we need to do is we're just going to do role, and then we're going to sync the permissions. And then from here, we just need to pass in an array with all the permissions names that we want synced to this role. So all we need to do there is we just need to grab this permissions. So this is the permissions name. We just need to grab this permissions as an array and then pass it in. So what we can do is we'll just do explode, and then request permissions. That's the permissions. So now the next thing basically is to create a new role, and then we're done. We don't need to worry about destroy, so everything else should be working. Let's just test this, and then we're almost done. Let's add view dashboard, save changes to role. I've got some sort of, I spelled request wrong. It looks like somewhere right here. Request, there we go. Let's try that again. Okay, so you know what? I'm looking now at the documentation, and I realized that what we actually need to be storing is not the... I thought we were storing the slug for the permissions, but we're actually storing the ID. We did the name. We actually need ID, and I didn't know that. So, yeah. So the value of all these needs to be the ID numbers and not the names. So that's where I went wrong, which means that we need to make sure that this array up here, this view object, has the ID numbers and not the names. So down here we need to pluck ID instead of name. Otherwise I think we should be fine. Yeah, I think it'll work other than that. So that was the one problem. I thought that you passed in an array of all the like slugs for the different permissions, but you're really supposed to pass in, now that I look at the layer trust documentation, I didn't read it through all the way, I guess. Anyway, so now that I'm looking at it, I realize you have to pass in an array of all the ID numbers that represent the permissions. So that's what we did wrong. Great. So now let's give it a try. So back over here. Let's try this again. Okay, so now let's go ahead and test this again. So we've already got a problem. Let's go through and just double check this. So it should be an array of 0. You know what? We might have broke it when we... Let's look in the database. I might have broke it that one time that I... Okay, so we know that superadmin is 1. Or the role ID, yep, we broke it. Okay, so there currently are no roles assigned to super administrator right now. So you gotta be careful. You can cause problems. So that's where we went wrong. So let's go ahead and assign a few. So now if we assign those 3, then that would mean that in our view object, we should have a couple things in our array. We do 1, 2, and 3. So now if let's try to save the changes. Session not found. Okay, so I did suspect one minor problem here. So when we pluck this, it's actually going to come in as these ID numbers are going to come in as integers. So you're going to have an array full of integers. Well, the way that Vue works, Vue is more strict on that, and it doesn't link this up. So technically, like, this value is not an integer, it's a string that happens to have a number inside of it. It's a string that happens to have an integer inside, but it's still a string. Whereas when Laravel outputs this, before they were strings because it was an actual string. It was we were plucking a varchar column, but now we're plucking a primary key column, which is just an integer column. So it actually becomes an array full of integers. So we need to convert an array of integers into an array of numbers that happen to be of strings that happen to have integers inside of them. Basically, that's what it is, because that's what this is up here. So we need to convert that, because otherwise it doesn't work. And otherwise, yeah, we just have problems where if we refresh this here, you can see we have an array, 3 items in the array. This is correct. We have 1, 2, 3, but it's these are integers, so it doesn't actually like work up here because these are looking for strings that match their custom value. So if I actually click this, then it does work. See, look, these are all strings like that. Although, we could try one other thing. Let's try one thing before I do what I was going to do. Let's try to, let's do if you do a colon, let's see if this works, and I'll explain if it does. Okay, so let's just put a colon there and then see if it works. It does work. Oh, there we go. Cool. I wondered if it would. So this is kind of complicated to describe, but basically what happens is if you just do this, here a custom value, this works. This has nothing to do with Vueify. This has to do with just the way Vue works. If you just have the custom value, then it only works with strings, basically. However, if you add a colon to the beginning of it, then it processes as like an actual method, and it'll actually process what's in the quotes instead of like just assuming it's a string, if that makes sense. So I wondered. Okay, great. So that works. That actually works better, because then when we convert it back over to PHP, then it's integers as well, which makes it more friendly for the other one. So that works out great. I thought I was going to have to map that array, but this actually worked. Okay, so now we're good to go. It looks like everything is working. So now let's go ahead and give it all those permissions it had before. So we're going to check all these, everything except for view dashboard and down. That's what it was before we broke it. Let's go ahead and save changes to roll. It brings us back. That's great. And we have all those permissions. So now it's working. Edit roll. Again, we have all of them. Let's add view dashboard, or just to make it, let's make delete posts. Click save. And now we have delete posts down here and so forth. Some of you guys noticed, so I'm flashing a success message to the session, but it doesn't show up here, and that's because we haven't created it yet. We have to go through, in another video, we'll go through and do all of that stuff. So I'm trying to get permissions done first, but yeah, I'm kind of just like programming forward thinking here. I'm like, well, eventually I'm going to want to have flash messages for all this. So I'm just programming it as if they were there, even though the flash messages don't actually show up yet. But we will add that to the layout, and then it will work, and they'll be there. So you don't get the flash messages yet, but they will be there eventually. We'll do a video where we add flash messaging to our layouts, and then all of a sudden all these things that we've been creating flash messages for that weren't working will work instantly. So I'm just kind of forward thinking on that. That's why you don't see it here. But you can see it's working because now we have the ability to delete posts. And if I edit it, you can see we have that ability. So if I get rid of that, we should have everything now no longer have the delete posts, and we do. That's how it worked. So there's no longer that delete posts. So there we go. Let's also try changing that here. So for super administrator, let's say this user can't do anything. It seems like we're having a problem saving the description, which is weird. Let's go through here and look at it. Okay, let's make sure our edit has a description. That's the problem. Okay, that's what I wondered. Okay, so there's no name here for description. So it wasn't actually being thrown into It couldn't be pulled by the request because it wasn't getting submitted because there's no name. Okay, now it should work. Let's try that again. So edit user, and now let's say this user can do anything. Okay, save, and perfect. Now we got that. So I think we're good to go. Oh, the last thing we need to do is be able to create a new role. That's pretty self-explanatory. Let's go ahead and do that. So we're gonna do a create method. In fact, we can basically copy once again. We're gonna copy the edit. So for roles here, let's do create. All we gotta do is return the view. That's it. Inside of roles, let's make our new file, create.blade.php. And then we're gonna paste everything in here. And then we're gonna say, okay, so that's the basics, and then from there, we basically have all of our permissions. We're going to list them. You can check them. We can leave all of this the same. The one thing we need to do now, I remembered, is we're going to go back to the create in the controller and make sure to pass in all the permissions. But other than that, this is basically ready to go. So permissions selected. This will just be empty because by default there won't be anything. So we could even pass in an empty array just to make it easy. So that's basically, I think this is ready to go. So the only difference is create new user for the button, and that's it. Okay, so now in the controller, let's make sure to pass in those permissions. Okay, now for store method, we'll go through and basically do what we did in the edit method. Again, to make our job easier, we can actually copy it. So for store, we're going to do basically the same thing. The only difference here is we need to also validate name this time. And name is going to be required. We'll do max 255. And then I also want this one to be alpha dash. And then, in fact, I really don't want it to be 200. Let's take it to 100. It's insane, but we'll just keep it there. And then the other thing we need this to be is unique. So we need this to be unique in the permissions database in the name column. And then, yeah, that's the most important thing for that one. So now that we have name, then the only thing we need to do here is new role, and then let's go ahead and add that role name. Otherwise, it's the same. Okay, so then once that's been done, then we can do request permissions, sync permissions, all that can be the same. Perfect. I think that's everything. So then that allows us to create a new role. So let me, we're going to try it real quick. Let's go through here. Oops, manage roles. We're going to create a new role. We're going to say random role. Random role is and then we're just going to check a couple of them. Create user. Undefined variable ID in the role controller 59. Oh, because of... Okay, so we saved it in the database now. It just didn't redirect. That's the only problem. So let's go ahead and we'll go to the role ID. We don't have an actual ID because there's nothing in the URL, but we'll do it this way. So it did successfully create. That was the redirect is the only thing that broke. So if we go back now to here and refresh, we should have a random role. So that's now been created. We have the details. We have those three things. So it's got its 3 permissions assigned to it. and it's got its description. It's got its everything's looking good. We could edit this, get rid of a couple permissions. Now it's down to 1 permission. So yeah, this is all very good. There we go. So it's all working. Everything works. There we go, guys. You saw it here. So went ahead, did the basics. So now we have roles. Now the last step is going to be, we need to go through, we need to manage our users. While we're managing our users, we need to pull open all of the roles and then be able to assign roles to them. It's actually a pretty straightforward process. So that'll be a quick video.